Today we're going to look at box plots. So the learning goals for today's lesson, by the end of this lesson you're going to be able to create a box plot of a data set, and you're also going to be able to analyse side-by-side box plots. So a box plot could also be called a box and whisker plot, and it's used to graphically visualise a data set using the 5-figure summary. That's our minimum value Q1, our lower quartile, a median, Q3, and our maximum value. So outliers are also visualised on our box plot, and they're marked with an X, and they're not considered as part of our 5-figure summary. The box is drawn from Q1 to Q3. So here we have our box here. We draw it around Q1 to Q3. So we draw a box around Q1 to Q3 like that. We mark Q2, our median, as a line in the middle of that box, and then whiskers go to the highest and lowest values that aren't outliers. So we draw our whiskers out to the highest and lowest values that aren't outliers, but it's important that we also mark the outliers with an X on our axis. It's probably the most important thing is to mark your outliers first, so that you know where your highest and lowest values that aren't outliers are going to appear. Side-by-side box plots, or parallel box plots, more often called side-by-side box and whisker plots, can be used to compare two sets of data. So when we're analysing, we can compare where the median is. So is one median higher than or lower than another? We can also compare the interquartile range. So is one IQR larger or smaller than the other? And also the range, and that talks about the consistency of the data, because if we've got a low interquartile range or a low range, it means that most of the data is concentrated around a smaller area, and it means that data is more consistent. We can also comment about whether there are any outliers. For our two examples here, A and B, we can see that the median for A and the median for B can be compared. So we might say the median for dataset B is much larger than the median for dataset A. We can also have a look at interquartile range. We can even just see that the interquartile range for both of these is different. So the interquartile range for A is much lower than that for B. The range itself as well, going from and looking at the lowest and highest values here, is much lower for A than it is for B as well. So we might say that the data set for A is more consistent than the data set for B. We can also say that, however, it appears that one outlier exists for data set A and there are no outliers for data set B. Let's have a look at an example now. If we look at the following data and then look to try and draw a box plot to summarise the data and make sure we mark any outliers. Well, in order to draw our box plot, we need our 5-figure summary, and we need our any outliers as well. So in order to do our 5-figure summary, we need to put our data in order. There we go. And we'll have a look at making sure that we can find the values now, the minimum, maximum, Q1, Q2 and Q3. So if we have a look and divide our data up, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 data points again. So our 7th value is going to be the middle value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our median Q2 is going to be 5, Q2 here. Our minimum value is going to be 2, our maximum value is going to be 12. We're also looking now at our lower half and our upper half. So our lower and upper half, we're going to have medians in the lower and upper half here. Okay, just like our example in our last video. So this will be our Q1 and this will be our Q3. So if we're looking at our 5-figure summary, then we can say that our minimum value here is 2, our Q1 is going to be 3.5, Q2 is going to be 5, Q3 is going to be 6.5, and our max is going to be 12. It's our maximum value. So now we need to determine whether there are any outliers, because we need to make sure we graph those outliers first before drawing our box and whisker plot. So remember, to determine any outliers, we need to look at the lower and upper bound. So the lower bound for our outliers is Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. We probably need to find our interquartile range then as well. So our interquartile range is going to be our our Q3 minus Q1, Q3 minus Q1. So it's going to be 6.5 minus 3.5, so that's going to be 3. Our interquartile range will be 3. So then that means that our Q1 will be, we can substitute in here, 3.5 minus our interquartile range of 3. So our 1.5 times 3, times 1.5. And if we put that into our calculator, we should get -1. And our upper bound should be Q3 plus 1.5 times our IQR. And Q3 is 6.5 plus 1.5 times our interquartile range, which is 3. So our upper bound should be 11 there, and then we can actually see that we do have one value that is an outlier, because we don't have any numbers below -1, but we do have one number above 11, which is 12. So we can say therefore 12 is an outlier. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to create our graph, create our box and whisker plot, firstly plotting any outliers. So we know 12 is an outlier, so we can plot it on our graph, X here, plotting it on our graph there. We can plot our box around Q1 to Q3. So our lower bound for Q1 is 3.5, so we can put it here. And our upper bound is for Q3 is 6.5, so it can go here. Draw our box around it. You'll use a ruler, of course. And Q2 is going to be 5. That's our median, so we draw a line in the middle at 5, where 5 is. There we go. And then our whiskers extend to the minimum and maximum values that aren't outliers. So our minimum value is 2. Our whisker can extend down to 2 and up to 11. Oh, sorry, not 11, 9. 9 is our maximum value that isn't an outlier. So here we go. There. So just to see that 9 is our maximum value that isn't an outlier, because essentially what we're saying is 12 is going to be plotted as an outlier as an X on our graph, and 9 then becomes our maximum value that we have on our box and whisker plot. So that's how we draw our box and whisker plot, including our outliers. Let's just run back over those learning goals for the lesson again. So we've learned how to draw a box and whisker plot using a 5-figure summary, and we've also looked at how to compare different box plots in a side-by-side box and whisker plot or parallel box and whisker plot scenario.